For 14 years, I gave my life to Matthews Commercial Construction, my family's company. I started when I was 22, working summers on job sites. While I was in college, I learned estimating. After earning my engineering degree, I stayed on and eventually became operations manager. I built that company from the ground up, brick by brick, problem by problem. My sister Clara, on the other hand, was living in New York. She chased a career in marketing, flying in only occasionally for short visits. While she was building her life elsewhere, I was here, sacrificing, grinding, growing the business. Ethan. My father's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. Did you hear what I said? I blinked and focused on the three faces staring at me. Sorry, what? This doesn't change your position, Dad said gently, as if he were doing me a favor. You'll still be operations manager. Clara will be taking over as CEO when I retire next year, but your role is secure. Clara smiled at me, part sympathy, part victory. At 34, 2 years younger than me, she carried herself like someone who had just been handed the keys to the kingdom. Ethan, she said softly, polished and confident. I hope you know how much I value your expertise. I couldn't do this without you. I looked at her and wondered if she truly believed that. She had worked at the company for exactly 1 year. 1 year. I had given 14. The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Why, Clara, and not me? The room went silent. Logan suddenly became very interested in organizing his briefcase. My mother's smile tightened. Dad cleared his throat. Ethan, we've discussed this, he said. Clara has the vision for where the company needs to go. She's better with people. Clients love her. You're brilliant with operations, the technical side, but I'm not CEO material, I finished for him. That's not what I'm saying, he replied, though his eyes drifted away from mine. My mom stepped forward. Darling, you're a crucial part of this company. You can still help from behind the scenes. Clara will need your support. Behind the scenes. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. That's where I've always been, I thought, making everything work while others take the credit. Clara stood up and walked over to me, taking my hands in hers. Ethan, this partnership will be incredible, she said. You know operations inside and out, and I'll bring in the big clients. Together, we'll be unstoppable. I looked into her eyes, those same hazel eyes she shared with me and our father, and all I saw was certainty. She truly believed she deserved this. Congratulations, I said finally, pulling my hands away. If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish. I left the conference room, ignoring my mother calling my name. The hallway of Matthews Commercial Construction felt unfamiliar, like I was walking through someone else's life. Photos lined the walls, projects completed, ribbon cuttings, handshakes with major clients. My father appeared in most of them. Clara appeared in several recent ones. I looked carefully. There wasn't a single photo of me. That night, I sat on my balcony with a bottle of whiskey and my laptop, reviewing project files like I had done countless times before. The city lights glittered below me. In the distance, I could see buildings we'd constructed, especially Harrington Tower, our largest project yet and the one that had put Matthews on the map as a serious commercial contender. Harrington had been my project. I'd stayed up 3 days straight preparing that bid, calculating costs down to the penny, designing the innovative construction approach that won us the contract over companies twice our size. Dad had been the face of the presentation, but the work had been mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Hey, bro. I know today was a shock. Let's grab lunch tomorrow and talk through the transition. I value your input more than anyone's. I took another drink and didn't respond. Then my laptop chimed, another issue on the West Side development. Something else that needed my attention. There was always something. 4 years, I'd worked 70-hour weeks. Holidays spent on job sites. Vacations cut short by emergency calls. Relationships sacrificed, all for the family business. Because I believed one day it would be mine. What a fool I'd been. I shut the laptop and leaned back, staring at the night sky. A decision was forming, growing clearer with every passing second. If I wasn't going to inherit the company, if everything I'd given meant so little, Then it was time to change how much of myself I gave. No more 70-hour weeks. No more midnight emergencies. No more sacrificing my life for Matthew's commercial construction. From now on, I would work my scheduled hours. I would take weekends off. I would use my vacation days. And most importantly, I would start looking for other opportunities. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like freedom. The next morning, I walked into the office at exactly 8 a.m. Nearly an hour later than usual. Several employees stared in surprise as I passed through the lobby, coffee in hand. "Everything okay, Ethan?" Grace asked. She'd been with the company longer than I had. "Never better," I said, smiling. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" My office was already buzzing. 4 voicemails from site superintendents, 16 emails marked urgent, and 3 project managers waiting outside my door. I listened to their issues, gave clear, direct instructions, and wrapped everything up in 40 minutes. No hand-holding. No absorbing their stress. Just management. At midday, Clara appeared at my door. "Ready for lunch?" "Can't today," I replied without looking up from my computer. "I've got plans." She paused. "Oh. I thought we were going to discuss the transition." "There's nothing to discuss," I said flatly. "You're the heir. I'm operations. Business as usual." "Ethan," she said, slipping into the coaxing tone she'd perfected in childhood, the one that usually got her what she wanted. "Don't be like this." I finally looked up at her. "Like what?" "I'm doing my job, Clara," I said calmly. "Exactly my job. Nothing more, nothing less." She frowned and studied me. "Dad mentioned you haven't been returning his calls." "I've been busy." "Too busy for the Westridge bid," she shot back. "He said you were supposed to review the final numbers, but you never sent them." I leaned back in my chair. "That wasn't on my calendar for this week. If it's urgent, I can look at it next week." "Next week?" she said sharply. "Ethan, the bid is due Friday." "Then someone should have scheduled time for me to review it properly," I replied, turning my attention back to my screen. "I'm sure you can handle it, though. You're better with clients, after all." Silence settled between us until she finally spoke again, her voice tight. "Fine. I'll tell Dad you're unavailable." "You do that." After she left, I leaned back and took a long breath. Part of me felt guilty. I'd never avoided responsibility before. But another part of me felt something darker and strangely satisfying. Let them see what happens when I stop working myself into the ground for a company that will never be mine. At exactly 5 p.m., I shut down my computer, gathered my things, and walked out of the office. I didn't check for last-minute emergencies. I didn't do my usual rounds to make sure everything was ready for the next day. I just left. The freedom was intoxicating. The Westridge bid went out without my review. We lost by a narrow margin due to an error in the materials estimate, one I would have caught immediately. The following Monday, my father called me into his office. "What the hell is going on with you?" he demanded, his face flushed with anger. "We lost Westridge because of a rookie mistake." I sat calmly across from him. "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate," he snapped. "We've been courting Westridge for 4 years. This was our chance to break into healthcare." "I thought Clara was handling that bid," I replied evenly. "She doesn't have your eye for technical details yet," he said, frustrated. "She needed your expertise." "And if someone had scheduled time for me to review it during business hours," I said, "I would have provided it." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm no longer available 24/7. I work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I take lunch breaks. I go home on time. I don't check emails on weekends." "Since when?" "Since you made it clear that my 14 years of sacrifice meant nothing when it came to succession." The color drained from his face. "So that's what this is? You're punishing the company because you're upset about Clara?" "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm adjusting my work-life balance to match my actual role. Operations manager. No stake in the future." "You have the same stake you always have," he argued. Your compensation hasn't changed. Everything's changed, Dad. You can't expect me to work like an owner when you've made it clear I'll never be one. He ran a hand through his graying hair. I need you, Ethan. The company needs you. And I'm here, I replied. During business hours. Doing exactly what my job description requires. No more, no less. He stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. I've got a meeting with the Harrington Group on Thursday. Their CFO specifically asked for you, wants to talk about the cost-saving measures you used on their tower project. I checked my calendar. I can do 9:30 to 10:30. If it starts at 8:30, I'll be there for the second half. I stood. Anything else? He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. No, he said finally. That's all. As I walked back to my office, I could feel eyes following me. Word had spread about the Westridge loss. People whispered, speculating about the Matthews family. Let them wonder. The Harrington meeting turned into a disaster. I arrived at 9:30 as planned, slipped into the conference room, and quietly apologized. My father shot me a glare that could have frozen hell. Clara looked confused. Alexander Pierce, Harrington's CFO, glanced up. Ah, Ethan, he said. Just the man we need. We were discussing the modular approach you pioneered on our tower project. We'd like to adapt it for the new development, with some modifications. For the next hour, I was fully engaged, answering questions, refining ideas, improving their plans. This was the work I loved, solving problems, innovating, adding value. After the meeting, Alexander pulled me aside. I was worried when you weren't here earlier, he said quietly. Frankly, your father and sister seemed out of their depth. Clara's still learning the business, I replied diplomatically. So I gathered, he said, eyes sharp. Your father mentioned she'll be taking over as CEO. Interesting choice. I said nothing. It was answer enough. Matthews got the Harrington account because of you, he continued. Your expertise. Your creativity. I hope that doesn't change. I appreciate that. He handed me his card. If you ever decide to make a change, call me. We're always looking for talent like yours. I pocketed it. Thanks. As they left, my father approached me, relief and resentment battling on his face. You saved that meeting, he admitted. I did my job. Where were you for the first hour? I told you my availability. What could possibly be more important than Harrington? My life, I said simply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got work to finish. As I walked away, I heard Clara ask, what's going on with him? Dad snapped, I don't know, but he needs to snap out of it before he costs us everything. I smiled. They still didn't get it. They thought I was sulking, that I'd come around eventually. They had no idea I was already updating my resume and contacting people in the industry. Alexander's card wasn't even the first offer I'd received. It was just the first one I was seriously considering. Let Clara handle it, I thought. She's the heir. A week later, chaos erupted. I was reviewing superintendent reports when my father burst into my office, face pale. Harrington just called, he said. They're reconsidering future projects with us. I looked up slowly. Why? Apparently, he said, there's been a misunderstanding about the timeline for their new development. Clara spoke with Alexander yesterday, Dad said. She agreed to a completion date 5 months earlier than what we discussed. That's not possible with their design requirements, I replied flatly. Not unless they want to increase the budget by 45%. I know that, Dad snapped. Everyone in this business knows that. But Clara thought she could score points by promising an aggressive timeline. Now Alexander's saying we either honor what she promised or they reconsider their relationship with us. He paused, letting the weight of it land. 18 million in future contracts, Ethan. At risk. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. What do you want me to do about it? Dad stared at me, stunned. What do I want you to do? I want you to fix this. Call Alexander. Explain the situation. Work out a compromise. He respects you. That sounds like a CEO problem, I replied calmly. or an owner problem. Not an operations manager problem. Ethan, for God's sake, this isn't the time for attitude, he snapped. The company is at stake. The company that will never be mine, I said evenly. The company you made clear belongs to Clara's future, not mine. So let her handle it. She's the heir, right? My father's face flushed with anger. So that's what this is about? You're willing to let our biggest client walk away because your feelings are hurt. My feelings aren't hurt, I said. I've simply adjusted my investment in this company to match its investment in me. He ran both hands through his hair, pacing. What do you want? He demanded. A title? Fine. We'll make you co-CEO with Clara. No, I said gently. I don't want a consolation prize. What I wanted was for my 14 years of sacrifice to mean something. I wanted you to see my value before there was a crisis. Now it's too late. His anger faded into something closer to fear. You can't mean that. This is your family. Your legacy. No, I corrected him. It's Clara's legacy now. You made that decision, not me. He opened his mouth to reply, but his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and cursed. It's Alexander. I have to take this. Good luck, I said, turning back to my work. Dad paused in the doorway, looking lost in a way I had never seen before. Then he answered the phone and left. I sat alone in my office as a strange emptiness settled in. I should have felt vindicated. My warnings had come true almost immediately. Instead, I felt hollow. This company had defined my life for so long. Watching it falter should have hurt more than it did. Maybe I'd already detached myself from Matthew's construction. Maybe that was a good thing. The Harrington crisis was only the beginning. Over the next month, 3 more major contracts collapsed due to client management failures. Clara, despite her supposed people skills, was drowning. She didn't understand the technical constraints that governed pricing and timelines. She made promises our teams couldn't keep. She chased new clients while neglecting existing ones. Meanwhile, I did exactly what my role required. No more. No less. I managed operations efficiently during business hours. I skipped evening client dinners. I didn't work weekends to save failing projects. I didn't step in to fix problems outside my scope. I watched the disaster unfold with detached curiosity, like observing a slow-motion car crash from a safe distance. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my mother showed up at my apartment. She had never done that before. When I opened the door, the worry lines around her eyes were deeper than I'd ever seen. "May I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. My apartment was sparsely furnished. I hadn't spent much time there before, work had consumed everything. Now that I had reclaimed my evenings and weekends, I was finally making it feel like home. One wall was lined with new bookshelves filled with engineering texts and novels I'd meant to read for years. On the dining table sat a half-finished model of Harrington Tower. Mom noticed it immediately. "You're building a model of the tower?" "Just a hobby," I said with a shrug. "Something to do with my free time." She ran her fingers along the edge of the table, avoiding my eyes. "Your father is worried sick. The company is in trouble, Ethan." "I know," I said. "Clara's trying, but she's not qualified to run a construction company. She never was." Mom's eyes flashed. "That's not fair. She has other strengths." "Being your favorite isn't a business qualification, Mom." She recoiled as if I'd struck her. "Is that what you think? That we favored Clara?" "Didn't you?" I asked quietly. "You gave her the company despite her having no relevant experience or demonstrated commitment. What would you call that?" She sank onto the couch, suddenly looking every bit of her 64 years. Your father thought, she could bring fresh perspectives. New ideas. And you were so good at operations. So good you took me for granted, I said softly. So reliable you assumed I'd always be there, working myself to death for a company that would never be mine. The company has always been yours too, Ethan. I let out a humorless laugh. No, it hasn't. And now you're here because you're finally realizing what that means. Tears filled her eyes. Your father wants to talk to you. Really? About the future. About your role. Will you meet with him? I considered refusing, but I didn't have the heart to. They were still my parents. When? Tomorrow evening. Dinner at the house. She stood, moved toward the door, then hesitated. He's not sleeping, Ethan. None of this is easy for him. It's not easy for me either, I said. The difference is I've had 14 years to get used to disappointment. After she left, I returned to my Harrington Tower model. I carefully glued tiny pieces together, making sure every connection was precise, every component secure. If only real life could be built with that kind of accuracy. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6:30. The Georgian-style home looked exactly the same, immaculately maintained, stately, imposing. I'd grown up there. Celebrated holidays there. Now it felt like walking through a museum of my former life. My mother opened the door, relief washing over her face. You came. I said I would. She led me into the dining room. My father and Clara were already seated. Clara looked up with a strange smile and dark circles under her eyes. Dad stood as I entered, his expression unreadable. Ethan, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. I shook it briefly and took my seat across from Clara. The table was set with my mother's finest china and crystal, reserved for special occasions. A peace offering, perhaps. Dinner was tense. We made awkward small talk about the weather, my mother's garden, anything except the company. After the dessert plates were cleared, my father cleared his throat. I think we need to talk about the situation at Matthew's Construction, he said. What situation would that be? I asked, even though we all knew. His jaw tightened. We've lost 3 major contracts in 6 weeks. The Harrington Group is threatening to pull future projects. Subcontractors are questioning our stability. The problem, Ethan, is that the company your grandfather founded, and that I helped build, is at serious risk of failing. And you think that's my fault? I asked calmly. I think you could help prevent it if you wanted to, he replied evenly. Clara leaned forward. Ethan, I know I messed up. I'm in over my head, I can admit that. But this is our family's legacy. Please don't let it fall apart just because you're angry with us. I studied her face. For the first time, I saw genuine grief there. Humility, too. This isn't about anger, Clara, I said. It's about value. About recognition. We recognize your value, Dad said firmly. That's why we're here. We need you back, fully committed. On what terms? I asked. Dad exchanged a look with my mother. Equal partnership with Clara. Co-COS, with a clear division of responsibilities. You'll handle operations, technical oversight, and project management. She'll handle business development, client relations, marketing, and succession. And when you fully retire? I pressed. You'll share ownership. 60-40. I leaned back and considered it. It was more than I had expected, a complete reversal of their earlier decision. And yet, it felt empty. This wasn't recognition. It was panic. Why the sudden change of heart? I asked. 8 weeks ago, Clara was the clear heir. What's different now, other than the company being in trouble? Dad's expression tightened. You want me to say I was wrong? Fine. I was wrong. I underestimated how critical your expertise is to the company's success. I overestimated how quickly Clara could learn the business. I made a mistake in judgment. Is that what you need to hear? David, my mother said softly, resting a hand on his arm. I shook my head slowly. What I needed was for you to see my value before the crisis. To recognize 14 years of dedication before everything started falling apart. To choose me because I earned it, not because you're desperate. So what are you saying? My father demanded. That you'll let the company fail out of pride? No, I said quietly. I'm saying I'm done working for Matthew's Construction. Silence crashed down around the table. Clara's face crumpled. My mother raised a hand to her mouth. My father just stared at me, disbelief etched into every line of his face. You can't mean that, he said at last. I do. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed an envelope on the table. My formal resignation. Effective 3 weeks from today. I've accepted a position with Harrington Development as their new Chief Operations Officer. Harrington? Dad whispered. You're going to work for Alexander? He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Full executive authority over operations. A significant ownership stake after 5 years. Recognition of my expertise from day one, not as a last-minute desperation move. Clara finally found her voice. You're abandoning us. Your own family. No, Clara, I said. The family abandoned me when you decided I was only good enough to work behind the scenes while you took center stage. I'm just accepting that reality and choosing what's best for my future. Dad pushed back from the table, shock giving way to rage. So that's it? 14 years and you just walk away, straight to our biggest competitor? I gave Matthews Construction 14 years of my life, I said. 70-hour weeks. Holidays. Weekends. Personal sacrifices you can't even imagine. And when it came time to decide the company's future, you didn't even consider me. You just assumed I'd keep working myself to death to support Clara's inheritance. We offered to fix that, my mother pleaded. Equal partnership. Equal ownership. Too little, I said, standing. Too late. Ethan, please, Clara said, her voice breaking. We can fix this. The company needs you. I need you. I looked at her, at the golden child, the favorite, the one who had always stood in the spotlight. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. The realization that she was in far deeper than she'd ever understood. You should have thought about that before accepting a company you weren't qualified to run, I said softly. Actions have consequences, Clara. Welcome to the real world. As I turned to leave, my father stopped me. If you walk out now, don't expect to be welcomed back, he said, sorrow heavy in his voice. You're choosing to become our competitor. There's no coming back from that. I paused, one hand resting on the doorframe. I'm not your enemy, Dad. I'm just not your safety net anymore. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. The drive home felt strange. I felt lighter than I had in years, as if a weight I'd carried for far too long had finally been lifted. There was grief too, for the family relationships that would never be the same, and for the dream of leading Matthews Construction, which had died 8 weeks earlier. But more than anything, there was excitement. A clean beginning. A chance to be valued for what I brought to the table, and to build something on my own terms. My phone buzzed with messages from Clara and my mother, begging me to reconsider. I silenced it and tossed it onto the passenger seat. Their fear was no longer my responsibility. After 14 years, I was finally free. My 3-week notice period was, put mildly, painful. My father barely spoke to me, communicating only through clipped, angry emails when necessary. Clara swung between emotional appeals and icy distance. The office hummed with rumors. I documented every process carefully, determined that the employees wouldn't suffer for my family's mistakes. Many had been there for years. They didn't deserve to be collateral damage in a family power struggle. On my last day, Grace organized a modest farewell gathering. Most of the staff attended. My family did not. Colleagues shook my hand, wished me well, and some even cried. I promised to stay in touch, knowing some friendships would survive the move and others wouldn't. As I packed the last of my belongings into a box, my father appeared in my doorway. I thought you'd be gone by now, he said flatly. Just finishing up. I closed the box and faced him. Did you need something? He stepped inside, eyes drifting over the bare walls that once held my degrees and project photos. The Harrington Group officially notified us today, he said. They won't be pursuing any additional projects with us. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? His gaze met mine. His gaze was probing. I nodded. Alexander made it clear they're following me to my new position. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that answer but hoped for something different. You always were a man of your word, he said quietly. That's something I've always admired about you. He extended his hand. After a brief hesitation, I shook it. Good luck, Ethan, he said. I mean that. Thank you, I replied. I wish the same for Matthew's Construction. As he turned to leave, he stopped in the doorway. The door isn't closed forever, he said. If things don't work out at Harrington, if you ever want to come home. This isn't my home anymore, Dad, I said. You made sure of that. He flinched slightly, then nodded. Goodbye, son. Goodbye, Dad. After he left, I stood alone in the empty office for a long time as memories flooded back. My first day as operations manager, the late nights poring over bids, the exhilaration when we won the Harrington Tower contract. I had spent so much of my life within those walls. But that chapter was over. It was time to write another. I picked up my box and walked out, nodding goodbye to Grace at the reception desk. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, and the future stretched ahead of me like an open road. My phone vibrated in my pocket, Alexander Pierce, no doubt calling to confirm my Monday start date. As I loaded the box into my car, I glanced at the Matthews Construction sign above the door. The family name that had defined me for so long. My heritage. My burden. My almost legacy. Not anymore. I got into the car and drove away without looking back. I was done playing a supporting role in my own story, done being taken for granted. I was valued now, for who I was and what I could do. It wasn't the ending I had once imagined. It was better. A beginning of my own making. Let Clara handle Matthew's Construction. She was the heir, after all. I was finally free. 8 months later, I stood in Alexander Pierce's office overlooking the city skyline. The Harrington Tower gleamed in the afternoon sun, a monument to what I could accomplish when my abilities were recognized. The board approved the expansion plan, Alexander said, sliding a document across his desk. They were especially impressed with your efficiency projections. The West Coast offices are greenlit. I scanned the figures, a deep sense of accomplishment filling my chest. In 6 months, Alexander continued, you've transformed our operations. Streamlined processes, new systems, profitability up nearly 25%. That's great news, I said. When do we break ground? Next month. And they want you to oversee the initial setup personally. Alexander leaned back, studying me. You've exceeded every expectation, Ethan. I knew you were good, but this, he gestured to the reports, this is exceptional. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove it. No thanks necessary, he said. Recognizing talent is just good business. He hesitated, then asked, have you heard from your family lately? The question caught me off guard. I'd managed to avoid thinking about Matthew's Construction, about my parents or Clara, for weeks at a time. Not directly, I said. No. I heard through the grapevine they're struggling, he continued. Lost the Westmore project to Klein and Associates last week. I nodded, feeling a complicated mix of emotions, satisfaction, yes, but also a faint sorrow. Not regret over leaving, never that, but sadness for the family relationships that had fractured. They made their bed, I said finally. Alexander nodded. They did. Still, family is complicated. Despite everything, there were moments I missed Sunday dinners at my parents' house, the easy conversations, the feeling of belonging to something larger than myself. My phone rang through the car speakers. An unfamiliar number. Hello? Ethan? It's Grace. Grace from Matthews, your former receptionist. Grace. It's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm okay, she said, then paused. I thought you should know, your father had a heart attack last night. The world seemed to tilt. Is he? He's stable. He's in the hospital. They say it was stress-related. Her voice softened. The company's in real trouble, Ethan. Clara's in over her head, and your father's been working himself into the ground trying to keep things afloat. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Because they are still your family. And because there are 4 to 5 families who depend on Matthew's Construction for their livelihoods, good people who had nothing to do with how you were treated. After we hung up, I sat in my car watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. 8 months earlier, I'd left Matthew's Construction without looking back, determined to build something of my own. I had succeeded beyond my expectations. I had nothing left to prove, to my parents, to Clara, or even to myself. And maybe that was why, for the first time since leaving, I allowed myself to think seriously about what was happening back there, not with satisfaction at their struggles, but with clear, objective perspective. Matthew's construction was failing. My father was in the hospital. Dozens of families were facing an uncertain future. None of it was my responsibility. I had earned the right to say, let Clara handle it. And yet, I couldn't ignore it. Not because I owed my family anything. Not because I'd forgotten the betrayal. But because it no longer defined me. I had moved on. I was whole. I was acting from strength, not pain. I picked up my phone and dialed Clara's number. It rang 3 times before she answered, her voice thin and exhausted. Ethan? Is that you? It's me. Grace called. How's Dad? He's stable, she said. The doctors say he needs to drastically reduce his stress. She hesitated. And the company, it's bad. We're going to lose the Miller contract next week unless we can cut costs by 12%. 3 project managers have quit. Suppliers want payment upfront because they think we're going under. Her voice cracked. I don't know what to do, Ethan. I'm completely over my head. 8 months ago, hearing that would have felt like vindication. Now, it just made me sad. I'm heading to the hospital, I said. We should talk, about Dad, about the company, about options. You would do that? She asked softly. I thought of Alexander's words about family, the fulfillment I'd found at Harrington, and the 45 families whose lives hung in the balance. I'm not making any promises, I said gently. But yes. I'll come talk. As I merged back onto the road, something crystallized for me. True freedom wasn't just about escaping the past or proving your worth. It was about choosing your next steps from a position of strength, on your own terms. Sometimes, that even meant circling back. Not to where you started, but to something new, built from the old. I didn't know what would come of my conversation with Clara. Maybe nothing. Maybe a short-term consulting arrangement. Maybe something else entirely. What I did know was this. Whatever happened next would be my decision, made not out of desperation or obligation, but from confidence and clarity about my worth. And that, more than anything, was the real victory. Living well. On my own terms. With the freedom to choose my path forward.